Hi, Tony Rogers here. I'm your host for this segment of H2W. And it's a segment that's extremely important but not talked about as often. Uh, we know about the different types of uses of medical cannabis, and we have seen some of the products of hemp, um, based on the fact that in in 2019, hemp became legalized hemp products throughout the country. But we have not really touched upon a major entity, industrial hemp, and the things that it might be able to do. So tonight's panelists will give you an understanding of the many uses of industrial hemp. And I'm sure that you'll be as amazed as I am. First person that I would like to introduce is a person whose handle, I think that's how you call it, is Cannabis Cutie, which is very, very fitting. She's a person who is not only beautiful but has a great deal of knowledge. I met her online at another conference, and the information that she was able to give was so on point. But Tammy Petrigrove graduated in 2018 from the University of Miami, a master's of business administration, and has a passion for cannabis history and the industry, and has been involved in a number of talk shows and in the whole movement as it relates to giving people understanding as to what is happening. The Cannabis Cutie Education program, in which we'll talk a little bit about, it talks about Cannabis 101 courses and other things that we should know, especially people who are looking at this as a business opportunity. How do you, where are the areas that you might be able to concentrate on outside of medical marijuana or CBD? So, Tammy, thank you for coming on, and please share with the listeners some of that knowledge that you have. You know, I don't know how you were able to put all of that information together, at such as a young age, but you have done so, and I appreciate it. And I would like for people to know what you know, as much as you can know. They won't know all that you know, but some of what you know.
Well, thank you for the introduction. And yes, I am a advocate for the plant, cannabis, have the entire plant, all cannabinoids. My goal is to kind of help people who want to be in the industry, to help educate them on the science, because my personal belief is that if you're going to be in this industry, you also have to advocate so that this plant can receive its freedom. And today we're going to be talking about industrial hemp. And ironically, this is a plant that at one point was required to grow as a citizen who lived here in this country. So it's just really interesting to see something that was required to banned, and now it's back again. And in that banning, there was a lot of misinformation and stigma that was built. So part of my goal today is to kind of help release some of that and detox it so that you can have a better understanding of industrial hemp and its medicinal uses. There are medicinal uses. You have two different types of hemp. You have agricultural hemp. That's going to be grown for its stalks and its seeds. And then you have industrial hemp. And with that particular subspecies of the plant, you're growing it for a cannabinoid known as CBDA. And I have a slideshow that I will share with you. And share my screen. Oh, actually, you know what? I'll just talk because I don't have it pulled up in a Chrome tab, and I know that we are limited on time. So what is CBD? It is a major phytocannabinoid, and there are three different classes of cannabinoids. You have endocannabinoids, which the human body produces. You have phytocannabinoids that are produced in nature, and most abundantly cannabis and hemp plants. And then you also have synthetic cannabinoids, which are usually created in a lab. So moving on. CBG is kind of where CBD begins. So if you have a hemp plant, the cannabinoids that are there when it's still immature, it's going to be CBGA. From there, it's going to convert into four different cannabinoids. So CBGA actually converts into CBDA. So a hemp plant is going to be really abundant in CBDA. Now, what is the difference between CBD and CBDA? CBD is going to provide you immediate relief. CBDA is going to provide you relief over a longer period of time. So think more days and weeks. CBDA is also a really strong anti-cancer drug, and we actually have research that shows that CBDA is very aggressive towards breast cancer cells. So
I
it
mean,
really does.
that's important.
It's very important. So it suppresses breast cancer cells and it stops them from spreading. And CBDA is also really good at psychotic disorders. And there are actually some cannabinoids that are really, really bad for psychotic disorders, like THC. But CBDA is actually GW Pharmaceuticals have filed to use CBDA and with their other medicines to help with psychotic disorders. So CBD is going to be more your immediate relief, and then CBDA is going to be a prolonged experience. So CBD is good for so many things. It's good for anxiety. It's good for stress. It's good for seizures. It is good for diabetes. Diabetes is an inflammatory disorder. So naturally, cannabinoids are really good at helping aid inflammation or knock it out. So it's good for type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And for type 2 diabetes, it actually can be managed with just CBD alone. Of course, this is something that needs to be discussed with a doctor, but I do know in communities of color, diabetes is a huge issue. So this is something that needs to be educated about. It helps with insulin resistance for type 1 diabetics. It is just a powerhouse. And doctors actually, pharmaceutical companies create anti-anxiety and antidepressant medications. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to mimic what CBD does naturally. CBD activates the 5-HT1A receptor in the body, and that receptor is going to affect your serotonin levels. So Wellbutrin, Lexapro, Prozac, that's what those medicines are trying to do, but CBD is going to do it naturally. And you may not necessarily need a serotonin increase. And your CBD is going to know that. It's going to kind of, if you already have too much, it's going to do whatever it needs to do to get your body back to homeostasis. So this is also one way that CBD differs from THC. It works on that serotonin receptor. So that it can relieve that anxiety and stress. And that's kind of where it's stronger than THC as with those issues. One of the most common things about CBD that people get wrong is they say it's non-psychoactive. And it absolutely 1000% is psychoactive. It's non-psychotropic. So there's a difference. Psychoactive. Do what?
I said, what's the difference?
Okay, so psychotropic is what THC is going to do to you. It's going to give you that high feeling, that intoxication. Psychoactive, it's going to alter your mind state. So going from a high stress state to a lower stress state, that's altering. So it is psychoactive. It's just, we've kind of been using those words wrong. So just to educate you, there's a difference between psychoactivity and psychotropic. So psychoactive, psychotropic. CBD is psychoactive, but it is not psychotropic. It's not going to give you that feeling of high or intoxication.
Well, as it relates to the industrial use of it, can you give a little information as to why it has the makeup of the plant, why it's so versus you could do so many things with it, whether it's energy or or housing and all of those things.
I mean, it is one of the oldest plants on this on the surface of the earth, and yeah, it can create fuels. It can create biomass. It is biodegradable. Any product that we can make with plastic, we could potentially make with hemp, and it will break down. I mean, plastic, I think it lasts 1,000 years or some astronomical number like that. But you can make hempcrete to build your houses. You can create clothing and textiles. You can eat it. I actually today made a hemp smoothie with hemp seeds, hemp oil, hemp milk, and strawberries. And there's so many different, I mean, it can feed you, it can clothe you. If we figured out how to make fuels for our cars, it could even push those around. And, I'm more so on the science of the medicine, but yeah, it goes beyond just the medicine and the benefits of CBD. It comes back to it can, rebuild our society and where we're having issues, sustainability issues. That's a big one, especially for the younger generation. And I just think, it's we're hitting a point where there has to be changes made, and this is absolutely the direction that we need to go, that we were going before it became a banned substance.
And before I bring our next guest on, could you just give a brief understanding to individuals? I know as you had opened, I mean the revolutionary forefounders are all hemp growers. Matter of fact, the first flag, Batty Ross, that was hemp material, and the Declaration of Independence was there. All of the sales or all of that. How did it get to be demonized?
That was around the Mexican Revolution, 1910, 1911. We had our friends from south of the border. They were coming into the United States, and with them, they brought what we were growing was just what we would call hemp, and Mexicans brought in the more medicinal side that has higher levels of THC. So we had our drug czar at the time, Harry J. Anslinger, who basically said, it's making Black and brown people sleep with white women, jazz players in New Orleans, Mexicans coming from the South. They basically just use people from the lower echelons of society and demonized it so that they could create plastics and nylons and other things that would help build up their wealth. The evil of cannabis is a fairly new concept. It's a plant that's over, estimates have gone, I've seen all the way up to 12,000 years, but at least 5,000 for sure is how long it's been around. And that new concept of demonizing it it's less than 100 years old. And it was created by a man for, essentially profits, for business. It was a business thing.
Nothing to do with health, nothing to do with the economy.
It was not medically controversial at all. It was politically controversial. Still today, there is no medical controversy surrounding it. We know the benefits.
Well, again, could you give the listeners information as how they might be able to reach you, your information about your classes and the other things that?
Yes, so you can find me
that you have.
Well, you can find me on Instagram at the Cannabis Cutie. You got to put the in front of it. So the Cannabis Cutie. I do a lot of information there. And actually today, if you check out my stories, I show you a little bit of the hemp smoothie that I made and the recipe. And I also have a website, thecannabiscutie.com. There I will be launching my courses. They're being built out. I have a Cannabis 101 course, again, for business owners who need to understand the science to be more successful in your business and to advocate. And then I also have a Cannabis business course for people who want to get in business, but they don't have access to basic business fundamentals like marketing, management, how to construct business, vision and mission statements, basic legal information, things that I was privileged enough to receive through higher education. I just kind of want to give the basics to those that maybe didn't have access to that.
Well, again, I commend you. I'm glad that we have developed a connection. There's so much. This woman has a lot of information, so I would go on her site if you're even thinking about getting into the business or just want to make sure that you have knowledge about what's going to happen in the future, because obviously this is going to be something that's going to be going on for some time. Uh, and again, give your site, Tammy.
It's www.thecannabiscutie.com.
Okay, a very fitting name. So, and stay with us because I'm sure that there may be some questions. But my next guest is a person who is related to a good friend who's in the fashion world. And I didn't sign anything, so maybe I should. I don't know whether I should say Leonard Davis, but I didn't say that. But anyway, he is an icon in fashion. I met him through Matt McCoy, and his niece, who is also in that area. She has a BA in fashion and design for Washington University, and in St. Louis, she's done some work as an intern. She has so many different types of uh, business uh, knowledge as it relates to developing different types of business approaches to the industrial cannabis component. And I thought it was interesting because she gives another slant as it relates to how to use cannabis in the textile industry. And so I would like to bring on Deanna. Uh, how are you doing, Diana?
I'm doing very well. Glad to be here.
So, Deanna, would you give us just a little information about your background and some of the things that you're seeing as it relates to the future of cannabis?
Absolutely. So I've been working in the fashion industry for about 14 years. I worked for a company called Eileen Fisher, a women's wear company based in New York, for the past 8 years. Since then, I've been doing sustainable fashion consulting and growing my business from there. I acquired a passion for sustainability and workers' rights by working in the industry. And I'm originally from Washington, D.C., so social justice is kind of in my blood. Third generation Washingtonian.
Well, you have to listen to the show next tomorrow because we're talking about social justice in this industry. But uh,
Absolutely. I've been working the industry for a long time, and recently, anyone who's been paying attention to the fashion industry has noticed there's been an uptick in the interest in sustainable fashion and better practices. In January of this year, I believe, Emmanuel Macron, president of France, signed the Fashion Pact, which is where a lot of companies signed on to this. It was a non-binding agreement, but there's definitely an interest from the top down, which is a newer development in fashion. Generally, it was more of a grassroots movement or consumers who would ask more questions at the stores, but it seems that there's a shift happening in the industry. So um, I I noticed that that was coming, and it's an interest of mine. So I decided to go back to school. I'm actually finishing up my master's in sustainable business and development at Glasgow Caledonian University in Soho. And my focus, as I was going through my classes and learning about the different ways that companies are making the shift from conventional materials to more sustainable materials, is that they're going very flashy, lots of high tech bioengineered fabrics, and it occurred to me that maybe there was a way to do it simply, and that's how I came across hemp as a plant. So, as Tammy mentioned before, hemp is a very sustainable fiber. It's very easy to grow. You don't need textile. You don't need fertilizer to grow it. You don't need pesticides to grow it. It's definitely called a weed for a reason because it tends to choke out all other plants. That doesn't mean that it's an easy per se plant to grow, but it requires less synthetic materials in order for it to be grown successfully. So I started digging a lot deeper into hemp as in terms of textiles, and uh, all across the world, there are lots of countries that are already growing hemp sustainably and have hemp industries. So China is the largest exporter of hemp in the world currently, followed closely by, I want to say it's France, Canada, and Chile, but don't quote me on the order. But that's generally the top four. So it's not a new development having hemp be present in the textile market. In terms of companies that are already using hemp, my former employer, Eileen Fisher, incorporates hemp in terms of blends for their materials. Patagonia has hemp products. A lot of companies that people have heard of. West Elm uses it in their furniture and sometimes their upholstery. So it's not a new thing. It's just that there's a new opportunity because of the newly legal status of it in America, that there's an opportunity to develop a domestic hemp industry because there are already other players in other countries.
Well, again, that's something that a lot of people may not have a focus on. But when you go into certain stores, you do see some hemp related clothing. But I know one of the reasons, as Tammy had mentioned, that it became illegal is like the DuPonts and the paper, the industry, the persons who had the funds to influence government created a situation where Randolph Hearst had paper, DuPont was doing some clothing, and so that's why it happened. But some of the things that you're talking about now bring on new opportunities, and it's great to see people like you and Tammy who are really the future to begin to start focusing on some of those things. And we talked about growth as far as growing it, and we're fortunate to have on the line, hopefully maybe two, but at least I know that Clarinda Stanley is on the line, and C. Stanley is part of a fifth generation farmer, originally from Anna Manny, Alabama, and now is in North Carolina. And she is the CEO of Green Heifer Farms. And I'm seeing that you have developed a way of growing organic hemp, and I see that you have a tea, and amongst other things that you are have on the market. But the important thing is for people to know, as uh, uh, Diana Parcell talked about, is that we have some homegrown, literally, opportunities to connect with people who are actually growing hemp in America, people who look like us. So, C, could you give us a little information about what you're doing and how you're doing it as far as the growing and processing and it? Could, could you hear me, C?
Okay. I cannot hear you, Tony, if you're talking to me.
Hi, I am. I'm talking to you. So hopefully your mic is on. Uh, but yes, I'm talking to you. We can see you.
Oh, I still don't hear you.
So let's see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mute.
I hear you, Diana.
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Wow. I heard everyone else. He's the only one I can't hear.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, don't let me stop the show, Diana. Would you let C know what we were saying so that she can jump in?
Sure. Tony was mentioning your organically grown tea and your the way that you're growing things on your farm. I was talking about how there are opportunities for organic hemp in the fashion industry. And since you're the expert, I think that we were looking for some input.
on
Sure.
the
So
growing
I'm
and
a
the
bit
process?
different in that I don't consider myself necessarily a hemp farmer. I'm a medicinal plants farmer. And you'll notice if you look at any of my collateral or any of my marketing, I do not use the term CBD. And there's several reasons for that. I feel that by isolating one of the 113 cannabinoids within this plant, it's doing it a disservice. We have cannabinoids, we have terpenes, we have flavonoids, we have so many organic components that make hemp the fantastic medicinal plant that it is. And to take it out of the context of other medicinal plants can be a disservice to holistic and natural forms of medicine. So at our farm, hemp is one of the beautiful medicinal plants that we grow. As far as my place in this industry, I speak more at a macro level. We consider ourselves to be a boutique soil to sip hemp farm. So we do grow where we blend our own um, teas, and our initial tea offering is hemp flower and holy basil, and it's named after my mother. The name of the tea is Brenda's Balm, and we have several other blends that we will be launching a little bit later this year. We practice growing with an ecological consciousness, understanding that to grow anything in isolation in nature is going to stress your soil. So we grow hemp, as I mentioned, we grow other medicinal plants. And we also believe in intercropping. So growing our hemp plants with other plants that grow well with it as a companion. Additionally, we are very much, as I said, focused on things on a more macro level. So I am very passionate about agricultural equity and the amount or the lack of producers of color in the industry. And yes, in cannabis, but in agriculture as a whole. When you look at the whole scope of agriculture, 96% of all privately owned farmland belongs to whites. So that
Mm.
leaves us with 4%. And that's all of us. So when you have situations such as the current global health crisis that we're in, it should really open your eyes to the fact that as a community, we have a lot to do in the areas of resiliency and self-reliance. You know, we can't feed ourselves if others decide not to feed us. So for me, that's very sobering. And then when you look at the billions and billions of dollars that are given in subsidies and grants and other forms of federal aid, and the very small amount that actually goes to producers of color. I have a problem with that. And then when you look at various industries within agriculture, or sub-industries, so to speak, such as cannabis, then you realize that even on the production side, there's not a lot of me's out there. So our farm is also in the process of building out to be a teaching farm. My goal is to ideally bring women of color with a particular focus on Black women to the farm where they can have extended on-site, hands-on learning experiences to learn how to grow with an ecological consciousness. And if they choose to grow hemp, although I am, again, one who does not believe in putting all your eggs in one basket. So I consider hemp to be my gateway crop. It has been a fantastic catalyst for the other work that we're doing.
Well, again, I can you hear me now? I don't think she can hear me, so I'm going to need you as a
I don't know why
translator.
technology is hating on you, Tony.
I'll be your
Oh,
visual
I don't know
translator, no
if it
problem.
is, but would you thank her for the information, but also asked her whether or not um, there are other industrial uses that she looks to focus on in the future,
Definitely.
and to
So
give
thank you
you.
so much for your contribution.
Absolutely.
That was lovely. And want to know if there are any other uses for industrial hemp that you wanted to highlight.
So I focus specifically on hemp grown for the nutraceutical market. I know we lump it all under the category of industrial, but that's really misleading. So the hemp that I'm growing is specifically for use. They call it nutraceuticals. It can be anything from natural health and beauty to supplements, vitamin supplements, or for me, the botanical blend teas market. There are tons of uses. I mean, if you're looking at the beauty and health space, there are uses to this plant that we haven't even discovered yet. So everything from topical applications to ingesting it to deal with various issues. I will say another reason why I don't single out CBD is because one would believe that we have this uniform endocannabinoid system when actually everyone's endocannabinoid system is as unique as your thumbprint. So while you may be taking CBD, your body may tell you that you need something else. You may need CBG or CBN or any of the other cannabinoids or terpenes or components within the plant or some combination thereof. So it's the market is wide open as far as areas of research. Our research, while it's pretty extensive, there's still a lot more to be done. Now, on the agricultural or industrial side, there's over 50,000 known uses right now. So from plastics and polymers to as one of the panelists mentioned earlier, being used in the building development space with hempcrete. You can use, there are people who use it for hay. There are people who use various components for food products. So there's tons and tons of applications and uses for the plant.
Deanna, would you ask C just to give the listeners how we can reach her?
Not a problem. So let us know how we can reach you for the listeners.
Sure. So if you want to stay in touch with my farm, the name of the farm is Green Heffa, Heffa, spelled the correct Southern way, farms.com. So Green Heffa Farms. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I don't do Twitter much though, so you'll be kind of bored there.
Well,
but if you would like to get in touch with me personally, you can also find me on all social media platforms as Farmer CEE. Get it, pharmacy. But either of those, you can get in touch with me.
Well, again, and as you can tell, I'm not used to this either, based on, but it's a learning curve for all of us. So, thank her for that. And and speaking of, and I'm sorry that she can't hear me, but speaking of variations, my next guest has many different skills. He's a chef. He is a journalist. He writes books. He is a filmmaker. He's a radio personality, and he has so many different types of outreaches. Matter of fact, Kidi Awadu is a person that impressed me again at a conference that we were in not long ago, especially when he talked about going to Ghana and creating a city based on using hemp and using it as a way to save the world. So please, Chef Akidi Awadu, how are you doing? And thank you for joining us.
Greetings to you, my beloved brother. I hope I do sound all right. Can you hear me just fine?
You sound just like a DJ, I tell you.
Hey. We do the best we can to give the people the highest quality that they would possibly want. What a joy it is to be with you, surrounded by these absolutely brilliant sisters. I mean, wow, I'm just tingling over here. I had to take my shoes off because my toes was tingling so bad. But yes, I am the conscious Rasta. I've known that moniker for many years. I literally just today had my 35th book just delivered, The Blackest Soil, Africa Can Feed the World. Now, the previous book, and this is a scientific roadmap for agricultural preeminence for the 21st century. And we're very, very serious about this mission to feed the world. I also have in my hand my previous book, which happens to be on this beautiful subject that our assist
And I
stars.
think you just did that one too, because I have a picture of you autographing that book, which I just downloaded, which is great.
Oh, that I sure do appreciate. I'm gonna spend the heck out of that money. You know that, right? The book is called Industrial Hemp Uses and Opportunities. And let me tell you, 3 brilliant hemp scientists right in a row. That's a hard act for me to follow, but I'm gonna do the best I can to stand up on my tippy toes and hopefully get a message through that the people can appreciate. You know, I think one of the things you and I had talked about in warming up to this conversation was the historical record.
Mhm.
And as our beloved sister, who I'm going to change her name to Princess Shuri, that is the cannabis queen. She personally, I think she's more Princess Shuri from the movie Black Panther, the technology master of Wakanda. You are going to be drafted, you know, when we get Wakanda 2 Village built.
Well,
We're
you're
going
going to Wakanda too, so that's
That's
great.
right. We are going to build. Actually, this will be Wakanda 3. The one in the movie, there's 5,000 acres set aside on the Zambia-Zimbabwe border. Dr. Akana Chiyombori Kwao has put together. And now we have a third one near Kumasi, Ghana. You and I have been talking about taking a delegation there. It was supposed to be a conference, a hemp and agriculture conference taking place in October there. But that has been delayed because of the global travel situation. So when they reschedule that, we're going to have a delegation. I'm going to take a delegation of a group of people that I'm hearing right now. Absolutely
I
brilliant.
know a couple of people. Matter of fact, Tammy said that she was interested in doing something like that. And I know a number of people. One of our H2W committee people also has business in Africa, Dr. Flora.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that sounds interesting. But give some of that history, because
Mhm.
it's a wonderful thing. Between you and Tammy, I mean, you guys should have a book.
Well, don't say that 3 times in a row now. It might just happen. But I do want to talk about the history. And I want to put this in context, see if I can diverge slightly from this beautiful spectrum of science our sisters are sharing, as well as the agricultural science is very important. I am a scientific futurist. So what we do in this profession, I have 15 different interdisciplinary studies that I do. And what we attempt to do is put history in the context of what is happening now and how does that bear on the future and the distinct pathways that we can create to be able to traverse that future. So when we talk about history, many times, too often, Africa is overlooked in the history of the evolution of civilization. So we like to go back to a time when we can see evidence that the Africans had been using both industrial and medicinal hemp. Just a little bit from the book, talking about this history. We go back to the time of the Pharaoh Akhenaten, who was married to the Queen Nefertiti, and they were the parents of the very famous Pharaoh Tutankhamun, or King Tut, as many people know him. So in 1353, before the Common Era, which happens to be 3,372 years ago. And how did they know it was 1353 BC? Is because the Africans already had a calendar system that was 2,888 years old by the time Amenhotep IV, Akhenaten, even came along. So we have a long story we're going to be catching up on. But we can see these drawings and these various scrolls, tablets. I can't remember the exact name they call them right now, but where we have the evidence, the papyri, the evidence that they were using industrial hemp. And just a couple of ideas. There's evidence that they pulled blocks of limestone to build the pyramids using hemp rope. Mm-hmm. The dried fiber was hammered into cracks in the rocks and then wetted where the fiber expanded, and that allowed them to split the rocks very precisely and then transport these smaller rocks to the pyramids. It was also at the time over 4,000 years ago where we can see evidence that we use as treatment for sore eyes and cataracts. It was reported to a medicinal hemp given to women to relieve sadness and bad tempers. Boy, I bet you well, I'm not even going to go there right now, but let's just say it's still going to be very helpful.
And I would hope that was not only for women but for men, because based on what's happening now, we just had our family therapist on last night. He was saying that the divorce rate and a lot of things have gone up because people are, 2020 seeing who they really are with and can't get away from them. So
You're right. And I bet you, it was in the ancient times the women that taught the men to use it for that very purpose. That's the way the women and the herbs have always been. As well as I have one other reference of hemp in ancient cultures, going back to ancient China, but it was the Egyptians who first identified cancer as an illness and then treated it with cannabis. And I have references for all of the things I say in the book. So just to take a little bit of the past, the present, and the future, in chapter 4 of the book, I do focus on industrial uses. And I've heard several references to wonderful industrial uses. You just can't keep a good plant down. Further, throughout the book, I say this is the plant that can save the world. One of the most ecological plants and versatile plants we can possibly find. We talk about, I heard mentioned hempcrete as a building material. I have some associates in Ghana who are going to be working with us in building this new village, are building with renewable energy materials. Now that the Ghanaian parliament has decriminalized the use of industrial hemp, we anticipate rapidly bringing hempcrete into these building processes. Hemp fiber is a great insulation in building materials, has wonderful, long, strong fibers. It does not rot. It doesn't attract rodents and other pests. It's recyclable, has great mechanical resistance, easy to cut and install. Hemp oil as a replacement for fossil fuels. There are other types of renewable energy fuels, including making fuels from algae grown in the ocean. That's in my newest book, The Blackest Soil, Africa Can Feed the World. Hemp fibers in automobile manufacturing. We do know the record of Dr. George Washington Carver of Tuskegee Institute working with Henry Ford in 1943. Right. Where at that time they developed not only some wonderful body materials for a truck that Henry Ford was famously shown hammering with a sledgehammer, and it didn't even dent the hemp body parts, but they were also scheming and plotting to widely introduce hemp as a fuel for engines. And of course, that was opposed by the oil cartel controlled by the Rockefeller family at that time. And the Rockefeller, and I think, Tammy, you've said this several times, and others are probably very well familiar with the prohibition on ganja in the United States, hemp, cannabis, ganja. The prohibition largely driven, it was a racist philosophy, or racist policy, as you were just informed, but also William Randolph Hearst, who had extensive paper and lumber milling interests, was opposed to it. The Rockefeller family was opposed to it. And the DuPont family, absolutely. So now we're free to be free, and we have the past, the present, and the future. Some of the other things I talk about are the value chain creation. And we really have to look at moving from seed supply through the whole value chain of growing, handling, processing. But we really need to get to the point of localized production into final finished products, such as paper making, hemp fabrics, excellent products to be used, hemp fiberglass. But then here's an area that I go into that I think is really groundbreaking, because I have 40 years of horticultural experience myself. And so my newest book, Blackest Soil, draws much upon that. Cutting edge research using enzymes and microbes to create revolutionary new products from this. In various fields of biotech, medicine, and genetic engineering, naturally occurring catalytic agents called enzymes are being used to alter biology on the molecular level. So we can see now this is starting to take place with industrial hemp and the use of enzymes. And then one other area I want to point out about the future use of hemp-based technologies are hemp-based super powerful, super capacity batteries. It is being predicted right now as we speak that in about 7 years, the internal combustion engine is going to become obsolete. And they will be replaced by electric motor vehicles. One of the current hindrances of widespread adoption of electric motor vehicles, one, the batteries are expensive. Two, the batteries don't hold a charge nearly as long as a full tank of gas. Number three, the batteries are very heavy. Well, now with these new generation of solid state supercapacity batteries now being developed, of which hemp-based batteries are amongst the cutting edge of this, it is anticipated that somewhere around 5 years from now, they will have developed sodium-based, meaning salt, sodium-based supercapacity batteries that will be able to hold a charge for up to 1,000 miles, will be
Wow.
much lighter in weight than the current batteries, which makes the overall efficiency of transportation much better, as well as they are much less prone to overheating and exploding like the current generation of lithium batteries. And when we look at this, and I don't know if I can zip right to that, like I said, I did just get the new book, but a super capacity battery made out of hemp. Let me just share with you one paragraph and then I'll open up. Critical to note is that hemp-derived carbon materials pose a substantial advantage to this emerging energy storage technologies market. Compared to the expense of developing graphene supercapacity batteries, hemp supercaps can be produced for a fraction of the cost, yielding an investment development advantage, ready for this, of nearly 363,000 to 1 when using hemp over graphene. 363,000 to 1. $1 of hemp to replace $363,000 worth of graphene for making these supercap batteries. So it's going to be an awesome future. And I tell you one more thing, Brother Tony, if my awesome future also includes me being next door neighbors with you and these three and brilliant sisters on this panel, that's a future I'm ready to claim.
Hey, and I don't have to wait 500 years. We had a panelist on earlier who said that you can live as long as you think that you can live, and that's an interesting concept. And
I'm a longevity specialist also. I'm the youngest almost 65-year-old man on the planet. Tony, this morning I only did 164 push-ups.
Yeah, well, I didn't do my push-ups, but at 72, I'm still trying to act as if I'm 50. So
that's what I'm talking about, man.
But I know that Tammy, you had talked a little bit about nanotechnology and how that begins to play into things, and Deanna, I know that in textiles there are, well, it's just going back to the future, because at one time all of the sails the Columbus used, the sails of most of the Navy at that time were all made out of hemp. So it's going back to the future, and we are getting ready to wind down, because obviously this is a conversation that could go on and on, but based on what our time is, I would like each of you again to give the listeners how they can reach you. And Deanna, you might have to help me with C. Stanley, because she can't hear me, but she can hear you. So to let her know what we're doing, we're just giving the listeners again how they might be able to get in. And I just got a note before we do that. Moses Matthews is on. I didn't realize he was on, but so we can't leave without hearing a little bit from him. So, Mr. Matthews, are you there? How are you? Can you hear me? I don't know. I'm having problems with North Carolina. Moses Matthews, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, sir. And Moses Matthews again is in North Carolina. Moses, do you know C. Stanley?
I believe I was on a panel with her in Durham.
Okay, and
February, I think it was.
Moses Matthews has been in the cannabis business, the hemp business, as a farmer long enough to be considered in his area one of the leaders who's coordinated a number of hemp farmers to begin to create a type of a coalition I think it's Gin Farmers, and tell us just a little bit. We're running out of time, but we just want you to give us a little information about your experiences and also what you see the future for industrial hemp is. Even though I understand that I shouldn't lump that into one thing.
That's okay. Greetings to everyone. We started our hemp initiative as a part of our land loss prevention effort in Eastern North Carolina and statewide. Someone spoke about the amount of land that Black farmers own now, and that's very true compared to the white farmers. But our effort has been designed to try to salvage Black farms in the state of North Carolina. Hemp was just derived from that. Growing hemp was one way of establishing the fact to these farmers that um, there are significant value in the land that they own, and we hope and plan, and we're working toward making it multi-generational. Our our name, Hemp Gen, refers to the generations of family members across the region that can grow from this, as well as a generation in new species and the business opportunities that come with it. We're in a rich area in eastern North Carolina, historically known for growing hemp for 300 years ago. So the land is there, the sunshine is there. One of our biggest impediment would be the hurricanes, because we've been damaged in two successive years with Hurricane Florence and Hurricane Matthews. But our challenge now is to try to go statewide. We understand that the industrial component of hemp is a necessity. Everyone talked about the medicinal side, but we have tremendous land masses in eastern North Carolina, and a lot of Black farmers own a lot of acreage, and several of them was really interested in the industrial hemp. We feel that there are many different material that can be made of it, and hopefully flow tile would be one of the ones that replace or supplement bamboo and some of the other artificial type materials in the home building industry. So right now we've started a co-op, the Albemarle Sound Cooperative. Um, our goal in 2020 is 50 farmers, and we're looking to generate 100 acres of growth as a baseline. And with that, we're just working tirelessly to make that happen, bringing in new recruits all the time. So it's a pleasure listening to the knowledge base that's been presented tonight. I'm eager to cross path with all of you at some point in time, and let's go get it.
Well, that's one of the points. Not only for people on the outside to know who you are, but for us to begin to connect with each other. I truly believe that all things is in divine order. And the fact that if it was not for where we are going through, I don't think that I could have all of you together as with the understanding of the importance of why it's necessary to be together. But we have people who right here on this screen, and I'm sure that with your knowledge will multiply, but we can talk about, the science of it, to grow it, how to process it, how to even take it home to Africa. So, I mean, I can't think of a better understanding of this plant. And one of the things that I got from you, Chef, was the picture of the goddess of knowledge, who has a crown of the hemp leaf on top, which allows for a clear understanding that what we're doing is coming full circle. What
That's
we're
right.
doing is
It was the goddess Seshat, Seshat. I encourage everyone to look that history up, and if it's your history, reclaim it.
I've sent that to all of us, and and Tammy and C, you guys, are following into your ancestral footsteps of
Mhm.
of people who have done things. But I would like to again have each of you please to let listeners know where they can find you. We will have that information posted on our H2W website so that hopefully you all can come together because I'm sure that when Chef Keely builds that village in Africa, there will be some knowledge of some growers here that can go into Africa and help with that. There'll be some scientific and municipal understanding that and also a need for some clothing.
Very
So
close.
it
We
means
will
that
need some
we
clothes, but
we
not
might
all
all
the
come
time.
together and do it and have our own business together, just
Mhm.
with the people that are here. It's enough knowledge in order to do that. But please just give and let's start. Tammy, can you just again give your contact information?
Yes. Can
I can hear you. And we have it here too. The cannabiscutie.com. Is that
okay, I just unmuted myself. Yes, thecannabiscutie.com or on Instagram. You mentioned nanotechnology. I have a video tomorrow dropping about nanotechnology, and that's at the Cannabis Cutie on Instagram. So yeah, my website is listed right there. Instagram is kind of where I try to do 1 minute vlog, at least one a week, to give you some information.
and your Instagram address is the same, the
Yeah,
Cannabis
at the
Cutie?
Cannabis. Yeah, you
Okay.
have to put the word "the" in there, or else a lot of cannabis cuties will pop up, and I
There's a
do
lot.
not do with them.
Yeah,
So,
I saw that. There's a lot of cuties that's coming up with it.
yeah.
Okay, Deanna Porcel, could you give a little bit of information as to how people might be able to reach you?
Definitely. Please feel free to reach out. It's dianapurcell.com. Diana like Ross. And feel free to reach out if you're interested in any sort of domestic hemp textile industry consulting. I'm looking into building a processor that's specifically for domestic hemp and the textile industry. So feel free to reach out. We're just getting started.
And that's something that we didn't mention, the 3D way to use 3D printers in order to produce a number of things, which is a whole nother thing. See,
Yeah.
can you hear me yet? And I don't think she can. So, Deanna, would
Absolutely.
you ask
So
her?
see if you could let us know how to get in touch with you. We all love to hear from you.
Okay. Yes. And it's so strange. I hear everyone except Tony and Moses. Yes, you can reach me at greenheiferfarms.com. You can also find our farm's information across any of the social media platforms at Green Heifer Farms. If you are interested in getting in touch with me, you can find me at Farmer C. That is my handle pretty much across all platforms. And I also have a YouTube channel where I am showing how me and my family are building our farm from scratch. So if you're into longer content, then definitely also check us out on YouTube, and that's under Pharmacy as well.
And Moses, could you let people know how we can reach you?
Yes, you can reach me at www.hempgenllc, and that's lowercase .com. That's the www.hempgenllc.com.
And last but not least, matter of fact, one of these days, do you have a book, Chef, about your Chef Keely is a raw food chef? Do you have books about that at all?
I have a total of 6 books in that series, 2 of which are recipes books, volumes 1 and 2. Volume 3 of the recipes will be coming out next year, as well as Living Superfood Research, Living Superfood Longevity, Get the Weight Off, and another one in that series called Living Super in Paradise. So we're trying to stay busy over here. I had one book come out last week. I'll have another book coming out in 2 weeks called Panic, what the coronavirus pandemic tells us about the state of the world today. And insofar as state of the world, everybody out there, you better start listening more and more to the people in this panel, because they're directing us to a sustainable future. For people who want to know more about my books, they can see a large collection of them at keidi.biz. That's keidi.biz. And food information, they can find that at chefkeidi.com, where we say food is nature's most perfect medicine, and medicine ain't never tasted like this before.
Well, again, I am honored to be able to have host a panel of such wisdom, and I believe that if we can start coming together like this more often, we can begin to do wonders. And as my grandmother always would tell me, you have to learn how to make lemonade out of lemons. So yes, we're in this state at this particular point. However, look what it has brought us. It's brought us and the world, because more people now are seeing all of you. Deanna, C, I hope you can hear me. Mr. Matthews, Katie, Tammy, thank you all for taking time to share your information. Please go to our sites to connect with each other, because I believe that there's some connections that each of you have with each other. So all things happen for a reason. This is no coincidence. So by the fact that you're all here is a reason for that. And let's not just let it be because we had COVID-19. I think it's something a greater need. And then again, thank Matt McCoy from Soul City TV for providing the opportunity. So thank you all. We will be able to put your information as far as your contact information on the H2W site, so that when others are looking at it, they will know how to reach you. And stay well. And hopefully at some point we can all come together and have a reunion, maybe in North Carolina or maybe Las Vegas or maybe California, but we can come together at some point, or we could all be on the trip going together, right? That sounds like a good deal. So thank you all. And that brings our discussion to an end. And I'm going to have to look at this again myself, because I have to look at this because I didn't really get a chance to hear all of you guys the way I wanted to. So I'm going to be my first viewer. So take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Good night.
Peace, everybody.
All right.
Bye.
All right.